Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm Tom Carrico. Welcome to our town hall of sorts on state and county and local government. This is sponsored by the Center for the Study of American Democracy, and we're delighted to have representatives from state, county, city, and village tonight. And I thought what we'd do to get started is to kind of go down the road, have everybody introduce themselves, what their position is, and how they kind of got into government. We'll just sort of do a quick pass, and then we'll do a second pass on some big issues facing you. Sure. Representative Carfagna, would like to get started?
Good evening. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Nancy, for the hospitality and for inviting me here. I'm Rick Carfagna. I am your state representative for the 68th House District. I've been on the job 9 weeks as of today. For those that may not be aware, the 68th District is all of Knox County, and it's also the eastern half of Delaware County, which is where I live. I'm in the southern portion of Delaware County in Genoa Township, which is just north of Westerville. How did I get here? I come from a small business family. Anyone that's maybe from Central Ohio, the Columbus area, may have heard of my family's store. It's called Carfagna's Meats, Specialty Foods. Small Italian grocery store. 80 years, 4 generations is how it's spanned. I grew up working in the business, but I obviously didn't go into the business. My father and my uncle were kind of raised from birth. It was just expected they'd take over the business. And they said, you boys go and you get an education, you do what speaks to you in this world. And for me, it's always been more of the civic process. I was the social studies geek in high school. And when I graduated from John Carroll University, I was a poli-sci major, and I got a job working for the Legislative Service Commission as an intern, where they place you with a couple of legislators as an aide. Prior to that, in college, I did get to I'd spend the summer as a page down at the Ohio House. Highly recommend that. That lasted a year, the internship, and then I stayed on for 2 more years as a legislative aide to a member out of the Toledo area, Lucas County, named Lynn Ullman, who was chairman of the Public Utilities Committee at that time. So I spent 2 years there, and I got married, and I was young and broke and realized it was time to start a family and make a little bit more money, and so I jumped ship. I went to the private sector, and I went to work for Time Warner Cable. And so I did local government relations for them for the past 14 years. And so I was kind of the liaison between our company and our townships, villages, cities, all of the local governments that were in our service areas. So I was the friendly face. I remember meeting with Mayor Mavis on a couple occasions about our operations. Customer service, permitting, build out of our plant, you name it. So I did that, and I got involved in my local township as well, and I decided back in 2009 to run for township trustee. I had been on the other side of that podium so many times, and I figured, look, I think I could do this. So I ran for township trustee, and I spent 7 years as a township trustee in Genoa. After term limits took shape, after the redistricting took shape back in 2012, we saw that Margaret Ann Rule, my predecessor, was going to be term limited. I started thinking about, look, we're going to have this vacancy, this void opening up. And I talked long and hard with my wife about it, and we said, look, this has always been something that speaks to me. This is something I think I really want to pursue. So ran last year. Here I am. I'm no longer working in the private sector. I've quit my job. No longer a trustee. I'm a full-time legislator, and just happy to be here. It's been a whirlwind 9 weeks, but things have been positive so far. Give it time. But that's how I got here. So sorry to take so much time.
Yeah. Thank you. Mayor Mavis.
Dick Mavis, Mayor of the City of Mount Vernon. I served as County Commissioner for 20 years, 75 to 95. It's been so long ago, most people don't remember that. Even have to remind Teresa once in a while that I was on there. But eventually they got tired of me, and I lost a race. I had run for mayor. Everybody asked when I was commissioner, I ran for mayor. And I said, well, I want to run for mayor because that's where the activity is. That's the hub of activity in Knox County. So it excites me to...
Sorry, I think that's me.
Up a little bit? How's that? Am I coming through? Testing, 1, 2, 3. Is that all right? Okay. said excitement and all of a sudden, So I did run for mayor and lost. 2 years later, I lost the county commissioner's race. I don't know if politicians ever know when the time is ending for you, so I lost 2 elections in a row. I did run for mayor again. I was out of work for a year, ran for mayor again, and was successful. So this is my beginning my 22nd year as mayor of the city of Mount Vernon. It's a great community, and I've been fortunate to be able to be there that long. I started out as a school teacher, taught math and science for 10 years. We family had a sporting goods store. Rick and I have that a little bit in common. We were in the sporting goods business for 40 years, and eventually I sold that out. We were a mom and pop business, finding it difficult. When I ran first in 1975, I always thought that my dad had served as 2 terms as commissioner. 2 years later I ran. I always thought people thought they were voting for my dad. Otherwise, Mavis was successful, and in 1983 I ran for state rep against a guy named Tom Van Meter, who'd been our state senator for a while. He'd run for governor, got out and wanted to get back in, so he and I had a vigorous race for state rep. Some of you remember Harry Turner, who'd served a number of years. He decided to retire. So Knox County, all of Knox was in it, southern Richland, and all but one township of Ashland was in the district at that time. And our slogan was New Spirit in the 76, because we were called the 76th district back in those days. I won Knox County, but got beat pretty badly in Ashland County, which was Tom's home county, and southern Richland also. But I'm a Democrat, and so you have to look kind of at the demographics and see where you are, and I guess I didn't see it very clearly back in those days. But since that time, we've done a lot of what I think good things in the city of Mount Vernon. I have great councils to work with, and my wife was a retired elementary librarian. Our 2 daughters have grown up, and I have 2 grandchildren now, and still have. I've said I'm not going to run again. I think time is getting up with me. I know some of you about saying, well, gee, he was 20 years as county commissioner, he's been 22 years, and he was 10 years a school teacher. Now all of a sudden you come up with an age that maybe he is too old, but I'm still feeling good about it, and it's great to be here tonight. And thank you, Tom. Tom and I have known each other a few years, and so it's good to be back in Kenyon College and on the campus here.
Thanks, sir. Mayor Kimmel, we had a debate for the Gambier Village. Was it last year?
Well, my term started in the beginning of 2016, and the election was the fall of 2015. Right. So I've had this job now for a year and a couple of months, and I've lived in Gambier now for about 11 years, and I guess I got involved in politics when I came here because I really was interested in finding a way to really make a contribution to the world, but I had decided to stop practicing law. I had practiced law for 12 years, and my husband and I had a son, and so I decided I wanted to stay home with him. And I still wanted to find a way to use some of the things I learned and cared about from my law degree and my law days, and also really be dedicated to service. I really feel that one of the greatest things that we can do in the world is to be of service to others. And so when you put those things together, and Kirk Emmert, the previous mayor of Gambier, approached me about 1 second after I moved into town and asked me to be on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and from there eventually ran for council, and then, as we were just saying, ran for mayor in the fall of 2015. I really enjoy the job. This is a wonderful community. It's a wonderful place. All kinds of interesting things happen here and come up here because of the incredible variety of people that come here. And so it's just been ever as interesting as I had hoped. And kind of can't believe, I guess now I'm a politician. It's not something I said I wanted to be when I grew up, but I'm really liking it a lot. So thanks again also for hosting this. It's really fun to participate.
Commissioner.
I'm Teresa B. Miller, and I'm a Knox County Commissioner, and I'm just beginning the first year of my 3rd term. I really got into politics, or what I like to say public service, by accident. I was a deputy clerk in the Knox County Clerk of Court's office, And the clerk at that time came to me and said, I would like for you to run for clerk of courts. I was very young, and he said, this will be a cinch. And I knew nothing about politics, and so I ended up having opposition for the appointment in the primary and in the general election. But I did get elected, and I think one of the reasons was I really did have a true interest in the clerk of court's office, and I knew it inside and out. And I think that was, even though I was new and was pretty young, people seemed to put their faith in me. So I did that for 12 years, and then I went to the Ohio Secretary of State's office, and I was the customer services manager under Bob Taft. So I got a taste of state government, and then I came back to Knox County and became director of the Knox Metropolitan Housing Authority, which extended from Knox, Ashland, and Holmes counties. So I got a chance to also handle a federal program. It was funded by HUD, so it was a little bit different than what I was used to. And then decided that I had a good background, I thought, to run for county commissioner. So at that point, I decided to enter that race. And I will say, when I was county clerk of courts, I did work with Mayor Mavis. He was a county commissioner at that time and was a well-respected county commissioner. So I watched how he did the job, and he had that for some time. But at that point, I ran, and I did have opposition, but I was elected, and the last 2 times I have not had opposition. I found that county government was really what I had a passion for. For me, I think having that local grassroots and being able to be in the community that I was representing and know that I was accessible to people, that I enjoyed. So that's really why this level has interested me so much. And I've been fortunate to work with good people. I've had 2 different sets of commissioners to work with. There are 3 of us, so this is my second group. So you have to learn personalities and how to get along with different types of people. And I think what's good is if we all come from different backgrounds with different perspectives, that makes a difference. And I think that it helps to have a woman on the board too. That's been something that I think that I bring a different perspective than the 2 male counterparts that I work with. So I'm very much enjoying the job.
Great. Well, why don't we start with you again, and we'll work our way back down the panel. Maybe just tell us, 2 or 3 big issues that you think folks should know about that are facing your respective government entities that are sort of big questions right now.
Okay. Well, I think we've watched the state budget. We've seen what the administration is rolling out for the state budget, and there's some issues that concern counties. One that probably not a lot of people are familiar with, Representative Carfagna will be, but we obviously, sales tax is a big part of our revenue, and there is a sales tax that's collected on Medicaid care organizations. That's been happening since 2010, and the federal government has told the state of Ohio that they no longer can collect that because they don't, across the board, tax Medicaid care managed organizations. So for Knox County, that would mean a loss of about $500,000 a year. So we watched as the administration rolled that out, and right now, the way it's been presented, and of course the legislature will have to look at this and work on it, but Knox County would receive toward the end of the year a one-time payment of about $472,000, and then the payments would stop. And I think one of the things that concerns us is that the state is proposing to make themselves whole, but counties obviously are going to have to do without that income. And so that affects the whole state. So I think revenue is one of those things that really does concern us because we are really an arm of the state. So the legislation that's passed, the mandates that come down, a lot of times are unfunded, and we have to manage to provide the resources that are necessary. So we're looking at that in particular. Another one of the things that has been kind of for us at the top, the Public Defender Commission, which is a county office. We fund that at about $461,000. The state is supposed to be doing a match of 50% on that, and they've now reduced that down to about 48%, and then the administration is proposing to reduce it to 42% by 2019. So the city puts in about $45,000 toward that, but this is an office that we are now being told we need to look at parity between the county prosecutor's office and the public defender's office. So we're looking at the salaries for staff, we're looking at housing, so there's a lot of expense with that. So we're concerned again that the state is not going to be reimbursing us for the amount of money that we need. We have a lot of infrastructure, about $80 million worth of buildings. So we're looking at a lot of capital projects that we kind of put aside during the recession. So I think revenue's probably falling, or heads the top of what we're looking at. And then it kind of goes down the line. You know, we've got the heroin and opiate crisis that's affecting, you know, across the country. State of Ohio is being impacted, and so are we. So we're seeing some pressures with funding on different types of the offices. We've added a detective to the sheriff's office. We've also added an assistant prosecutor on the law enforcement side to try to do it that way. Obviously, there's a lot of things that need to be done when we're looking at that, but it's also putting a strain on our Job and Family Services Department, which falls under the commissioners. There's a lot more children that are being impacted, so there's a lot more costs there. So I think, you know, it's just a lot of things that are coming down that are going to be expensive for the county as we go forward. So that's a start on what we're looking at.
Great.
Well, to follow up with, excuse me. There we go, I hope. Are we there?
It'll be recording even if it's not projecting, I think.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, if the light's
Okay.
on, you're good.
Thank you, sorry. I would follow up regarding the village with talking one topic that Teresa was just talking about, which does have to do with revenue. And this is the time of the year when all municipalities are responsible for planning their budgets, and the law in Ohio requires us to have balanced budgets. And we have had an experience in recent years with CASIC administrations where it does seem that municipalities have suffered in various ways by different changes that have been made, in particular to municipal income tax and the way that we can charge municipal income tax or other taxes that have been impacted by his proposals over the years. The thing that is coming up right now for us is in particular a proposal for centralized collection of income tax. For people who haven't thought about it before, income tax is, well, for us in the village, income tax is the primary support for all of our non-water related general fund matters. And we do have a 1.5% income tax. And the reason I'm dwelling on this is because the proposal has come down from, with the new budget from CASIC, that this would be collected centrally and then returned to the municipalities. And suffice to say that there are a whole lot of things about that that are really annoying, and it really seems inappropriate for our municipal income tax to be handled that way. So that's on our radar with our fiscal officer, with some appeals I will be making to Mr. Carfagna about the proposals that are in the state legislature. I would say also, for a couple of other things that are on our radar, a lot of times when I talk to students about local government, I like to talk to them about how local government, and in particular here in Gambier, over the course of my time involved, I feel like I can see that a lot of our issues are data points on the spectrum of responses to national things that are happening. And again, for example, you mentioned the opiate addiction problem across the country. But right here in our little village of Gambier, we touch on things like climate change. Our village council last year decided to pursue and build this year, this first quarter of this year, solar panels on the roof of the village community center. It may seem like a small thing, but here at the local government level, we can make that decision that really makes a contribution to the consumption of fossil fuels, and our citizens and our village council really support that. So that's one data point. Another example would be the body cameras that our Knox County Sheriff is wearing now. Again, another thing actually that the commissioners are involved in extensively because they their budget includes the funding for the Knox County Sheriff's Office. Again, for people who don't know, the reason the Knox County Sheriff's Office is relevant and important for us is because that's our police department. Because we're so small, we could have our own police department, but instead we have a contract with the Knox County Sheriff's Office. And we were really excited that the commissioners and the Sheriff's Department supported the purchase of body cameras and actually pursued grants that allowed these body cameras to cost us very little here in the village. And we're now working on upgrading our internet system so we can, put those films up. They need to be treated like the kinds of records, the public records that we have rules about. But it's another example of how on that big spectrum of race relations and the national concerns about the relationship between the police and citizens, we've done that thing in this county. We've done that thing in local government that's an actual real thing, that's a real response to what seems like a big issue but comes down to us here. So those are a few examples.
I feel like we're going to gang up on Rick. He has an excuse. He's only been there a few weeks, right?
Nine
You
weeks.
say I didn't do it. Let's see. I'm going to talk fast now because this goes back, as I said, 42 years in government. I spent 20 years in the commissioner's office. On the last year there, we hadn't raised any taxes, didn't have new taxes several years. So one of the other commissioners went with me, and we voted in a 4% sales tax. With that, I was out of office. That wasn't the only reason. We closed all the county landfill. We also brought modem. We were going to lose our state funding for public transportation. We were with Holmes County and Coshocton County, and they said, we don't want anything to do with it. I thought it was important. I thought in the future we'd need public transportation here. So getting out of the commissioner's office, I should have learned that a 0.25% tax increase will cause your opponent to say, you're the biggest tax raiser or tax increaser in the history of Knox County. But after the blizzard, I'm going really back, after the blizzard of 78, our roads in the county, all 400 miles of them, seemed like they went to heck in a handbasket. The mayor of Mount Vernon at that time, 2 or 3 business people, president of the chamber, we drove to Columbus, Ohio to meet with our state senator, who was Tom Van Meter at the time. We said, we need more aid. Our roads are gone to heck, and we have no money to do anything with them. And he said, and I remember it said, he said, have you enacted the piggyback taxes that Governor Jim Rhodes gave you? No, we hadn't. He said, well, how do you expect us to do something for you if you haven't done it for yourself? So frankly, we came back. I went to the other 2 commissioners and said, we need to enact. There were, this goes back too far, but there were 3 $5 increases on your license plate tax. If you did the first $5, everyone shared in it, in the townships, the villages, the city, and the county. If you did the second $5, the county got it all by itself. There was a third one there that the city got if it enacted. And so we did the first 2, which benefited everyone. So fast forward a while, I ran for mayor, and that was also an issue. Gee, the guy raised taxes. You don't want him as mayor. So I lost that election. Well, then 2 years later, I had to run for commissioner again, and that's when I lost. So a year went by, and I worked on trying to be non-taxing. And so I ran for mayor, and I think the only reason I got elected mayor, that Ernie Farmer had been mayor for 2 years, or 2 terms, and they'd done the first phase of Coshocton Avenue. The problem was they shut it off. It was closed for a lot longer than anybody said, made everybody mad. The election came along, and here I was. So I was elected. I lost the first race by, I think, 12 votes, and I think I won the second race by 7 votes. So if anyone ever tells you it's
But who's
not
counting?
important to vote, it is important to vote. Going into the commissioner's office, Coshocton Road was 3 lanes. If any of you remember when it was 3 lanes, it was catastrophic. I made that a mission of mine, and I found out that the previous mayor and service director had that as a project, but weren't able to move it forward. I came in and found out there were such things as TIF district, tax increment financing district. So we created that. It allowed us to borrow $4 million to do that project out there. So we now have 5 lanes to move traffic. Although if you're driving eastbound at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're probably thinking Dick Mavis doesn't know what he's doing. I'm going to blame the state for that because they did the engineering on that one. Anyway, transportation is a big thing, but I'm guilty, probably guilty of a lot of things, but I'm guilty just like everybody else is, and if we all spoke honestly, none of us want to raise anything. No tax, no fees, no, we do not want to do it. Well, here we are, I've been there 22 years. If you've read the newspaper at all, you know we've got a real budget crunch going here. Actually, not only in our general fund and our general operations, but over in the utility. We haven't raised wastewater rates, we haven't raised water rates sufficiently to cover the maintenance and operations that we have. So this last month, we've looked at about 80 communities, larger and smaller than we are, same size as we are. We found that we are in the lower echelon of that group in both water and wastewater. We need to do a number of things. So we have a study committee, we have council, the safety service director's already raised the water rates. We're working with council to the increase in wastewater rates. One of the things, and I hate to do this again, Rick, this is your fault. Most of
I
us
signed up for this, so it's, yeah.
about the green stuff that shows up on Lake Erie and Lake St. Mary's and apparently in the Ohio River. And they say phosphorus causes that. And they're looking at all of the wastewater plants that spew their treated water into the rivers of our state. They said this year that the city has to choose a firm to help them decide what is the best way to get phosphorus out of our wastewater. I hate this number because I don't think it's accurate, but $5 million has been kicked around. It may cost $5 million for us to meet the phosphorus level. Well, if you look at wastewater, and by the way, wastewater and water have to be self-sustaining. Their money can only be used in those. If you collect the money, it has to be spent there on both sides. So the money has to be collected in wastewater to do that. So that alone frightens us, let alone all of the plant operations. We have a 5 million gallon a day plant. We have a water plant that's just about 17 years old, 18 years old. What I've learned over this whole thing is, probably as a politician, you shouldn't believe that you should be reelected every time. You should do what's right for the people, and we should have raised those rates a little bit. When we built that new water plant, we should have started saving money then. We should have had a contingency fund that we put into that every year, because our operators are telling me now that we're going to have to do $18 million we paid for that plant. Telling me how. So 18 years later, they're coming to me and saying, we're going to have to put a bunch of money into that project. And I'm thinking, you know, why didn't we start 18 years ago? So from a standpoint, and just one more thing, but I think this is pretty typical of what happens to us all, is that when Governor Kasich came in, I've always said he's the smartest governor we've ever had. He knew where to get the money and not make anybody mad. Not make enough people mad that would get him out of office. He took the money from the townships, the villages, and the cities and the counties from local government fund. Balanced the budget on that. But it was a good deal, because if all of us banded together, every township, village council voted against it, couldn't have defeated it. So it sounded good. The only people that were crying was us. No one listened. No one listened to us. So recently, when we got into this budget crunch, I got with Terry Scott, who's a great auditor for us, and I said, let's go back and see what happened to our money. So we find that we lost about $800,000 over a 2-year period from local government. When they did away with the personal property tax, which everybody wanted to do that for years, we lost $160,000. They substituted that with a cap tax, but they told us all it will never bring in the money that personal property did. And it didn't. We get zero out of the cap tax. So we have cap tax we lost. We lost the money that came from the local government take.
State tax.
And finally,
State tax.
the estate tax is the element. We got about $300,000 a year. It was called the death tax. When people start talking to you about a death tax, you've got to believe it's wrong. It's terrible. So, state legislature, again, Rick wasn't there. They did away with that. So here we are. You're asking me what our problems are. We're looking at increasing our water wastewater rates. We made no secret about it. We're looking at raising our, going to the voters and asking for an income tax later. Ours is 1.5%. So we'd like to increase that. The other thing we've never looked at is a stormwater utility. I've talked to mayors around the state. Most of them went to the stormwater utility. It's like the Muskingum watershed tax. Most of you see that little $3 is down there. So it would be like that. We have about 6,500 lots in the city that would be taxed. The thing we're looking at now is all of the catch basins that have fallen apart over the years. We haven't maintained them. All of our waterways, we haven't maintained those. So we're looking at those. I'm not running again.
We can tell. Tell us what you really think. Rick,
You've been very patient, thank you.
Can
Go
I
ahead,
just tag on to Mayor Mavis, since he's talking about the piggyback tax, what we're sort of getting the message from, the last time that was done was in '94, so it's, you know, it's been over 20 years, and we do have a 0.5% left that we could impose. We're getting the message, at least we are from the administration, that you need to take care of yourselves. You know, we've got our own issues over here. We're going to take care of ourselves. You need to take care of yourselves. And we feel like we're almost being penalized because we haven't put any more taxes on. So it puts you in a really difficult situation. During the recession, we didn't want to do that because everyone was having to tighten their belts. So we did that too. But we're now figuring out that we're really expected to take care of ourselves. And if you've got that out there, they're looking at that. We, like the city, we have a wastewater treatment plant, the Knox County one that covers Apple Valley, Howard. We put $6 million of improvements in that a couple years ago. We also are responsible for the unincorporated areas. So we've done wastewater treatment plants in Bladensburg, and Millwood connects to Howard. So we are also dealing with all of those things that come down from the EPA, and as the mayor said, those have to be self-sustaining. And so you are always looking at how that's going to affect your customer, your public. You know, you know that it's difficult when you do those things, but we're being made to feel more and more, I think, like we better take care of ourselves. If you've got that capacity, we expect you to use it. So it's becoming more difficult, and I think in the end, you know, we're going to be faced with some tough decisions.
Rick.
Well, I'm Rick Carfagna, and it's all my fault. No, obviously the number one issue, at least for the time being, is going to be this budget. And you know, there's a lot we can pick apart in this budget here tonight. You know, we touched upon, you know, how the local governments are going to be affected through this. I haven't talked so much about how the schools are going to be affected, and that's, you know, something that's very disconcerting to me. Basically cuts across the board. Some are going to see increases, but you know, when you look at an area like Delaware County, where I live, you know, a lot of good growth. Well, it's a lot of rapid growth. Those systems are going to see increases. However, those increases don't keep up nearly as much as the housing paces. I mean, they're adding people more fast than they know what to do with them. So you go to a place like Olentangy Local School District, where 5 cents of every dollar in income tax they send to Columbus is what they get back. For every dollar they send, they get 5 cents back. And you have some districts that for every dollar they send to Columbus, they get $3 back. So it really goes against the whole, in my opinion, the Holder-Rolfe decision, where you have 95% of a local school district's funding, which is coming from the local, off the backs of local property taxpayers. And then you contrast that with an area like Knox County, where I think all but one district is going to be seeing cuts over the next 2 years, at least under the administration's proposal. And you know, these are districts that, you know, and the word that keeps getting tossed around is capacity. Well, they have the capacity. They have the ability to just go back and ask the voters for more money. They need to be doing that more. Well, that's easy to say when you don't have the sort of business tax base, commercial tax base that Eastern Delaware County has. I mean, I have 2 malls on my side of the county. I've got Polaris Mall and I've got the New Outlet Mall. Those alone are huge drivers. But not to mention the fact that the Knox districts, in my opinion, are pretty under-resourced to begin with. So to put further cuts on that, I think just compounds the issue. But what really, I think, upsets me the most is there are proposed cuts to our vocational schools, to our career centers. And I think that really just kind of flies in the face of what we've been talking about. I mean, and both parties have been talking about in terms of workforce development. We don't have enough people anymore that are designing things, that can repair things, that are building things. I was raised on the narrative like, just go to college. My dad told us, like, just go to college. I don't care what you major in, just get that degree. And to an extent, he's right. I mean, there certainly is more earning power having that degree. But we have kids who are coming out of college with 4-year degrees. They've got massive debt. Their degrees aren't being applied to their eventual career choice. My brother majored in broadcast media from the University of Dayton. He's running my parents' restaurant. I mean, he's not applying. I mean, he's better off having that education, don't get me wrong, but he's not applying it towards his career path. I have endless amount of meetings every day. I average about 8 to 10 meetings a day, but I hear over and over, we have a shortage in the building trades. We don't have enough carpenters. We don't have enough truck drivers. I mean, you name it, electricians. I was really honored that Knox Career Center, their building trades section had their graduation. It was their final day of training. And I went there, and I was supposed to be there an hour. I stayed 3 hours. I went up in a cherry picker with one of the female students, and it was amazing. I mean, just what these kids are just excited. They've got a lot of energy, and they're going to do great things to rebuild the infrastructure in this country. And I walked around the Career Center, and I saw all the different operations being taught. There's an auto body section. There's and one girl said, you guys going to be here because I'm going to fire up this. She had an acetylene torch, so we had to leave the room. And I just, okay, fine. It just amazes me, and I think it's also turning the whole notion of gender roles on its head too. Just to see a lot of women, 17 and 18-year-old women who are taking different career paths in life. They're becoming electricians. They're becoming landscape architects. They're not all going to teach preschool or to go to cosmetology school, and that's really exciting to see. And that's kind of what I want to instill in my daughter. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I want to tell her, like, look, don't let society tell you what you can and can't do. I mean, you go and you do what speaks to you. Some of the other issues, the opioid epidemic. Gosh, we could talk about that all night too. We're seeing, I think, 18 deaths a month from heroin, if I'm not mistaken. It cuts across all aspects of our lives. I mean, it's a crime issue, obviously. There's a lot of smash and grab crime in our communities. People leave their doors unlocked, and they steal your loose change, or they pawn whatever they can to get a fix. It's a problem in our courts. I understand Knox County Jail, I think, is pretty much at capacity.
It has been.
It's and it's also a workforce problem. Before I left my company, I dealt with about 24 different local chambers of commerce. And so I would go around Central and Southeast Ohio, and I would talk with business owners, and I would say, well, what's going on? How are things in your company? Number one thing I would hear, well, there are 2 things I heard. One, lack of soft skills. I can't find anybody show up to work on time. Or when they do show up, they're wearing flip-flops, or they don't know how to communicate with people. But number 2 is I've got really good jobs to fill, and I can't fill them because I can't find anybody pass drug test. So it's a major problem. We've really got to, I know that they're doing a lot, but there's so much more that can be done. But we've got to deal with it not just from a tough on crime perspective, but you've got to have sentencing reform, and you've got to deal with it from the aspect of treatment. Say what you will about the Medicaid expansion, but there are 500,000 Ohioans now that have access to not just substance abuse treatment, but also mental illness services. And I think that doesn't get talked about enough. 100,000 residents, 100,000 Ohioans have severe mental illness that are now getting treatment as a result of the Medicaid expansion. So with regards to Medicaid, I don't know what's going to happen with that. We're kind of in a wait-and-see approach with the federal government, obviously. We're currently operating under the assumption that we're going to continue to see the government fund. It's currently 95%, I think, this year, and it goes down to 90% as of 2020. But, you know, it appears that they are going to make major changes to it. And, you know, I don't know what they're going to be, and I don't know what to brace for, but we'll deal with it when it comes to us and figure out what the best route forward will be. I guess the last issue would probably be just, you know, again, job attraction to this state, economic development. You know, that's one of the philosophical battles going on with this budget is what is the best sort of, what is the preferred method of taxation to spur development and growth in this state. The governor seems to think that, you know, cutting income taxes and raising consumption taxes is the best way to go with that. I'm not sold on that. You know, you tell me, I mean, show me how any of us come out ahead. I mean, if you cut our income taxes by, say, $250 a year, great. But you've just increased the cost of living across the board. Because what the administration is proposing is a sales tax hike across the board. They're also going to raise taxes, again, on cigarettes, on beer, on wine, on cable TV, on a variety of other, variety of other services. And you know, again, I just don't know how you come out ahead. When you raise the cost of living for Bob and Betty Buckeye in this state, I don't know how you're doing them any services, especially people that are of lower incomes that aren't paying as much in income tax to begin with. So that's it. You know, and I think personally there are more things involved with luring businesses, attracting businesses to this state than just taxes. Workforce development again. I think having an educated, you know, an educated populace is one. I think energy prices is another one, and you're going to see some action on this with the General Assembly because you've got the investor-owned utilities that are looking to become partially re-regulated again. We're in a deregulated state right now. You have a couple of energy mandates currently. There's a renewable mandates portfolio in place, and there's also some energy efficiency mandates that are in place. And you're going to see, I think, some tweaks to those. You know, the prices of insurance, workers' compensation. You know, there's a lot of factors that go into what makes a business or an entrepreneur want to take a financial risk in this state. So we're going to try our best. You know, we've been told it's a tight budget. You know, I'm not aware that we have any budget holes or any shortfalls. I mean, notwithstanding the managed care issue, obviously. But it's a tight budget. I don't know that we have extra money to kick around for things, but there's a lot of discussion going on, and I would just caution everybody it's very early in the process. You know, for the superintendents that I talk to, I tell them, Chairman Cupp, whose office is directly next to mine, who chairs the Finance Subcommittee on K through 12, I said, I think they just met for the very first time this past week. So we've got a long ways to go. The budget is going to be changed probably a half a dozen times during this process before we complete it in the summertime. So.
Great. Well, why don't we leave it there? We'll actually, I think at this point, should open up to questions. We've got 2 microphones, one on each side. And if we want to just raise your hand, and I would just ask that folks wait for the microphone and make sure to put your statement in the form of a question. And we'll try to keep it short so we can do a lot of them, if you wouldn't mind. Who wants to go first? No? Betsy.
Oh dear. Hi, thank you. I'm a Gambier resident and a member of the Village Council. And, well, I have a couple of questions, but we'll start slowly. Ms. B. Miller, I know that you're on, I'm trying to read my bad handwriting. You're on the Solid Waste District Board.
Yes.
And one of the big issues in Gambier, we are fabulous recyclers. And Rumpke's left the business. And I know that with gas prices being low, recycling doesn't seem to be worth the effort. But as a village council member and a resident, and I know other residents are worried about this, are you making any progress in finding alternatives and ways that we can continue to recycle and do the good recycling job? Because it certainly matters in terms of our trash and everything else, financially.
Well, I do believe that we just added a drop-off to Gambier.
Yes, you did.
Obviously, when Rumpke decided to leave, we hoped another vendor would step up to do that, but obviously vendors didn't feel they were going to make the profit they needed, so they decided not to do that. So we are part of a 4-county solid waste district, and the commissioners in all 4 of those counties sit on that board. Recycling is a big component, recycling and litter collection, a big component of our EPA plan that's approved, and the mayor sits on the policy committee. So what we've done is we found out a lot of county residents were not aware of the drop-offs around the county. We now have 15. So there's been a lot of education done on making sure they know where their drop-off locations are out in the county, because we found a lot of county people were coming in. What some people didn't realize either, at the Rumpke facility, the city of Coshocton and the county of Coshocton were bringing their recyclables there. And then we found out that some commercial companies were also doing that, which is not what it was for. So the biggest issue was trying to make the people in Mount Vernon understand their options, and every hauler that participates in the village or in the city of Mount Vernon has to offer recycling. So that's one of the things that the city makes sure happens. So right now we're trying to do a lot more education. It does not appear that anyone is going to take over that center, and it's not feasible for the county or the city to do that. We looked at that, and it's just not feasible. So really what we're doing is we've increased drop-offs in some of the townships. We've added containers. So we're trying to really make sure that everyone's being affected by that. And we're not getting calls anymore. So we feel like that people are using those extras, and like the one in Gambier that we didn't have before. So that's really something in our plan that we strive to make sure we hit the percentage. So it's not something that we don't think is important. This has just been kind of difficult with Rumpke doing that. But I think that we're attacking it and trying to put more containers out there for people to use.
So this would continue beyond 2017? We can look forward to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The district's committed to that. The district is funded through tipping fees in all 4 counties. So that's what funds this, and we have a contract for all the drop-offs. So we're doing whatever it takes to make sure we meet the need at this point.
Great, thank you.
All right, right here.
It looks as though the most vulnerable people are losing out. Children with disabilities in schools, people on Medicaid without other choices. The Affordable Care Act has helped so many millions of Americans. I work with students whose parents are addicted. They have a real struggle just there. They have, what do I want to call it? They're traumatized by what happens in their homes. They have trouble functioning in schools. If you pull back the Medicaid, their parents don't get treatment. Things are worse for them. I wondered, would you consider, instead of cutting income taxes, not cutting income taxes? Most of the cuts go to the very wealthy in the first place. You know, maybe some families will get $6 back and others will get $300,000 back. Let's think about this a little bit. Why do we make our least capable people, ill, old, disabled, bear the brunt, or just villages?
Rick, do you want to take that?
Yeah, well, I agree with you about the most vulnerable. When I worked as a staffer originally in the House, our baby was mental health parity. That dealt with making sure that insurance policies were treating mental illness on par with the treatment for physical illness. That was something that we fought for, and we took our shots from the chamber and the NFIB and some of the other business groups, and we didn't get it passed, but it was passed later on. And it exposed me to something that I didn't have an appreciation for early on, and that's people suffering from mental illness. It cuts across all demographics, and what you're seeing is the substance abuse, the opiate problem. I mean, just drugs overall and alcoholism. A lot of times it is masking mental illness. I think the two are very much intertwined. So I think that it's very important that we are taking care of the people that can't take care of themselves. And so these people are self-medicating most of the time with drugs and alcohol. We need to make sure that we have a safety net in there for people suffering from mental illness. That's my opinion. Second day I was a legislator, I got pulled into a meeting with Scott Ryan, who is a legislator from Licking County. And he said, I understand that you have a little bit of history working with consumers in the mental health community. I said, yes. And we ended up talking for an hour and a half. And there's an initiative at work presently called Ohio Hopes. And there's about 15 legislators that are working on this. And they're dealing with it in buckets. There's a couple that are working on the substance abuse issue. There's a couple that are working on workforce. There's a couple working on sentencing reform. Representative Ryan and myself are working on the mental illness aspect of it. So we're meeting with National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, with the Adams boards, in my area, and that's the other challenge too. The Knox Adams board is tied in with Licking County. The Delaware County Adams board is tied in with Morrow County, but they work very well together, but I've been reaching out to them as well. So it's something that is personal to me, that I do want to take an active interest in. Look, at the end of the day, I do believe in cutting taxes. If we have an opportunity to cut taxes for people across the board, I would like to do that. But I want to make sure that we're also taking care of the most vulnerable in our society. That's the best I can offer to you. Not good enough?
No, listen, why do the rich need to get even richer while the poor are getting poorer? And you know the divide is widening. I don't understand persevering along that line.
Okay.
But thank you for trying to answer it.
Okay. Who's next?
I have a question. I was wondering if, from your experience, if there's less partisan gridlock at the state and local level than what we see at the federal level, or if you face similar challenges in that area.
Could I add, is it partisan gridlock or is it a different kind of gridlock?
I mean,
Well, when I was a town, I mean, one of the refreshing things about when I was a township trustee was that it was completely nonpartisan. And I really appreciated that we could come together as a board with residents and we could look at spreadsheets and figure out the best way to fix a pothole or to add more cruisers to the streets and not have to get into this, debate over your conservative, your liberal credentials. I mean, people could come together and just look at the dollars and cents and make the right decision. So I do miss that already. And I'm seeing it, well, and look, I mean, we've got 66 seats in the House, and you have, but it's not, let me say this. I would not say that all 66 are necessarily monolithic. And I think you could say the same for the 33 as well. That, within each of the partisan groups, you have subgroups with different philosophies and different priorities.
It's interesting. This was really interesting to me when I got involved again in local government in a village like Gambier. The Ohio law provides that villages of a certain size, less than 5,000 people, the election is nonpartisan, and you very specifically don't claim a party. And I guess at our level, I feel also like you were describing about township trustees, that we're really very, very practically oriented in trying to, make sure that all these practical things like garbage and recycling and water and everything happen in our towns and villages. And for us, we're not also saying, well, I always say this because I'm a Democrat, and I always say this because I'm a Republican. We are not having that conversation at our level, I don't feel.
I know from the county level, that's why I like county government or local government. That does not get in the way. And I've, worked with Democrats, Republicans. Once, you have to run as a party, but once you're elected, I think on the local level, we're just here to do a job, and we're not tied to, a caucus like, you are when you get to the legislature. So it just doesn't factor in for us. And I've worked with Dick And we've never, we've always just, I think, had what was best for county government or whatever government on the local level. You want to do what's best for the public, and I think that's what we strive to do.
In the 22 years, I've worked with several councils, and sometimes we have most of you know, we have 7 council members and a president of council. Bruce Hawkins is president of council and has been for several years. In those years, sometimes it's 4-3 in favor of the Dems, and sometimes it's 4-3 in favor of the Republicans. I have never felt in any of the things we proposed that the issue was he's a Democrat, we're not going to do that. At this level, even though we are partisan in this town, this city, I've never felt that we lost an issue because I proposed it and it was outvoted. If we lost the issue, it was because it was kind of a bipartisan denial of it.
Good. Oh, right here.
So you were talking earlier about capacity, and if I understood you correctly, the discussion in Columbus is whether those local entities couldn't be taxing themselves more? Is that what they're meaning by capacity?
That's how I understand the administration's approach is, the case administration.
So of course we would like, you know about some of the school districts in this county that have really, really suffered to be able to pay basic bills. So of course the discussion should be the opposite, right? That the capacity of poor rural areas is not there at all in terms of taxing themselves more, and they really need more help from the state. Anybody voicing that point of view?
There are a lot of
that
people.
Equity issue.
There are a lot of people voicing that point of view. I mean, there are a lot of people that are angry with the numbers that came out for school funding. So, are we going to be able to find the money? I don't know. I don't want to sit here and make assurances, but I can tell you that we are advocating for funding to be restored.
Along those lines, I'm a College Township trustee and been on board about 18 years now. And I keep seeing the state increase the mandates and decrease the funding. So for example, I just called our auditor and said, well, and for all of you, I'm not going to run again either because I'm going to propose that we go to 6 mills for our fire levy. But that won't do it, will it? Cation knows this. Won't do it, will it? 6 mills will raise $142,000 for our fire department. Can you run a fire department on $142,000?
And you can't be sure that you can pass 6 mills either. You can't be sure that
I'm confident we will pass the 6 mills.
in other places.
Everybody here, College Township resident or village resident, would vote for 3/4 of a mil additional to keep your fire department here? Let's raise your hand if you would. We had about 10 people last time that didn't vote for it. So they see that as a very important service. But my point is that local governments have suffered under this administration and this party through the lack of funds. And you know that probably too. You're a township trustee.
Yes.
We just don't have the capacity to raise the funds. And unless we're given additional capacity to be able to do that, we can't even operate. I mean, that's part of it. So we have confidence that we can solve this, but boy, we would be nice to have some help, and not just scraps. I think we got $400 more a month in our general fund or something like the give back to the townships under a $10 million they threw out on the table. That's nothing. So myself, I would like to see that a constitutional amendment in the state that all taxes collected by the state of Ohio that are taxed on everybody. In other words, the income tax, the consumption tax, the sales tax, it would be constitutionally mandated for a division between the state and the local governments. Presently, the local government fund, throughout of the, there's adjustment formula that they do.
Can we let folks respond to that?
Yeah, respond to that. What are we going to do?
Is this to me? Or
Anybody wants?
I think it really starts with the legislature determining that.
We really didn't set this up for
Yeah.
you, Rick, as an ambush. I promise.
Well, because you weren't there.
It also goes to the county too, because if the county doesn't raise their sales tax, there is not any room for maneuver for any of us.
It's true.
Because it affects our local roads, it affects things that, the EMA service, some of the other services that we depend upon. And so you're on the spot too for increasing that, so.
Well, and I mentioned that obviously that's kind of where we're being pushed to do it on the local level. Doesn't make us particularly happy, but I think that's where it's going.
I think one of the things that is hard about local government, but it's also one of the things that's satisfying for me to work on, is that we do very practical, very real things. We keep talking about some of the examples of things that impact our citizens and that they need every day really to get along and to live. But by the same token, we do seem to often be at the tail end of the food chain when it comes to funds and funding in these various different ways that we're talking about. So we see all these municipalities really struggling. Again, it's another data point or multiple data point on the national scene where we see really extreme examples like Flint and other urban areas where there's not enough funds to do these practical things that we're talking about. And even here, although nowhere near as extreme in any of our examples, we still, in each of our municipalities that are responsible for various of these items, we're really struggling. And I don't even know where I'm going with that, except to say it seems, so then that stuff isn't getting done. I mean, it's the real stuff, it's the practical stuff, it's the nuts and bolts, it's the pipes, it's the water, it's the power, it's the everything that we really need every day, and it's getting creakier and creakier.
Well, isn't there a kind of a common theme here that's coming out as these are kind of the breaks of centralization, right? The break, centralizing revenue collection or centralizing authority, and there's less capacity and less authority at the lowest level, the most local level to handle. Does that seem right?
Yeah, I'm not, I guess it's an interesting comment because as soon as you say consolidation or centralization, I mean, there are some discussions, for example, our trustee here who's responsible for the fire department, and also actually Representative Carfagna, you worked in Delaware County on the study that was done talking about consolidating EMS. The reason I'm bringing that up is because consolidation often makes me think of money-saving, potentially money-saving activities, although they may be difficult or not really able to do them. So sometimes consolidation could help us at the local level, I think, and it's actually difficult to accomplish because you're trying to consolidate across all these different municipalities that are sitting in these chairs. But something's happening in the system that coming down to this local level, we're really scraping to get by. As Mayor Mavis said, you can read in the paper the holes in his budget, the holes in the commissioner's budget. We're very fortunate we have a solid employer in our jurisdiction that helps us have a solid budget, but even we see all these different things that are, really stressing local governments of all different types.
There was a magazine article I read about 2 weeks ago, and it was clear, not only in the state of Ohio, but throughout the nation, state governments are looking at local governments to make their own decisions. And for us, and we've heard us talk about it, the city has a 1.5% income tax. The county has their sales tax. Village has an income tax. So if you're sitting in State House, pretty easy to say, if you guys want more money, go get it. Because basically that's what the governor did. You need more money? He went and got it. They have to balance the budget. Career politicians are probably as big a problem as any. Once they get in office, they want to stay in office. And you stay in office. Federal government's not talking about increasing taxes as much as they are lowering taxes. The president's going to speak tonight, so maybe we'll know more about what their strategy is all about. But let's face it, we love where we live. It costs money to do that. The governor, when he first took office, frankly, I thought he was doing a strategy to do away with township government. He talked about bringing this together. Now, there are 22 townships. Do they all need a maintainer? Do they all need 3 trustees to run it? Do they all need this or that? For instance, in the city, do we need, should we be doing more things with our county? We try. We're doing things with our surrounding townships, not much beyond that. We do some things that's compatible with the county. We need to do more of that. It costs the city of Mount Vernon $5 million a year to run a 40-person fire department, fire and EMS. We did 5,000 runs last year. Can we do more than that, or could you do without, bring that together, be less expensive? Maybe you could. Road mileage, there's 408 miles of road in the county. The city has 96 miles of road. Township, Doug, how many do you have?
We have a 8.25.
It's a fourth of a township, however. But road maintenance is expensive. When people started leaving the cities and coming out in rural, they want the same services they had in downtown Columbus or downtown Mount Vernon. Not possible to do that. The environment, the environmental issues, all those things we have to contend with. But local politicians are on a real hot seat because I believe at least my feeling is that we're going to be forced to really take care of ourselves. I don't think we can expect a lot of help, certainly not from the federal government and not from state government the way things are going.
Don't you think it'll trickle down? That seems to be the idea, isn't it? Trickle down?
Well, I think what you hear is if the economy picks up, that means we're going to have more employment, more jobs, people paying more taxes. And if that happens in the city of Mount Vernon, and we're lucky to have Aerial Corporation, which is now picking up. They were down a couple of years, but now they're picking back up. So when they're going strong, we're going strong. We were $1.2 million short in 16 than we were in 15. Usually our income tax has been on several, kind of a regular climb upward, but not this past year. Now, part of that, we have the Siemens issue, we have the aerial issue, they had laid off some people. But right now, they're picking up going, so I suspect, and that's one of the reasons in my list to the media was, these are projects that are on delay. I mean, nothing I'd like better to get that economy going so you have more people paying taxes, more people working. So if everything would go well, I know if jobs are going to be as plentiful as people say, then we probably will trickle down to the city of Mount Vernon. But at this point, we haven't had much trickle.
Rick, you want to jump in again? We got another question.
No, just to kind of camp on, I think one of the best things we can do for our local governments is to try to improve, make a job climate, make it more conducive for job growth. You've got the Burgett property in Fredericktown. You've got the Siemens property in Mount Vernon. Trying to market those to some of these regional organizations like Columbus 2020, MORPC, Jobs Ohio. I had a really good meeting with Jobs Ohio. They're taking on somebody who's going to be handling strictly agribusiness. And so I've met with Jeff Harris up here with the Area Foundation, and we're going to be bringing up this new agribusiness guy to Knox County to sit down and say, look, here are the great things that are happening in Knox County. Here are the assets that we have to work with. We have some job-ready sites that, we have some turnkey buildings that could be easily, start it right up, bring a business in, and it's ready to go. We've already got utilities run out to these sites, and my job a lot of times is to try to be a facilitator, to try to put the right people in the room with the right people in our communities. So that's something that I'm at least trying to make an effort to do.
We've got one here, and then I think Joan.
I'll take 20 seconds. To my local representatives, whoever you are, I live on New Gambier Road. Having moved from the suburbs to here, I think your budget for emergency runs would go down if my taxes for putting lines on the road would go up, so that so those pickup trucks going around the corner aren't going to hit me head on. Just, I would love to know what it would take to get lines on the country roads out here in Knox County.
Actually, I think Joan was waiting.
We also had a question.
Oh.
A lot of the conversation over the last few minutes is unfortunately making me think far too much in the past when I was a political science student and studying comparative political science systems. In so many countries, political parties serve a function not only of top-down governance, but of getting concerns of the citizenry up into the system, from local to state to federal. And it seems like you've already used the analogy that you're the tail on the dog, getting wagged, rather than the head of the dog feeding information up. I'm really kind of interested in what you all do to take the concerns of your constituencies up the ladder to the state and to the federal government, because just for one example that affects this area that you have little control over, but you need to be speaking to, is we're at a 60-year low in commodity prices, which is about to cause real concern for our agricultural business, for our farmers, for their income, for the agricultural businesses in the area that rely on that, on property value, on income tax revenues, and we're going to be paying that price as those revenues fall. And they're all being impacted on the federal level by the trade policies of the new administration that are contributing to the fall in those prices by the trade agreements that they're nullifying and the conditions they say that they're going to put on new trade agreements that are going to affect our farmers' ability to find markets overseas. So the point is, you're the tail that's getting wagged by these federal policies. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to voice those concerns?
Even here at the very small village of Gambier, I certainly have lots of initiatives and lots of ideas about communicating up the chain. When I was describing the tail wagging the dog, really what I was trying to describe is somehow funding seems to get less and less and less coming down. But for example, it's a small example, but again, taking advantage of Representative Carfagna being here, I've prepared a 2-page letter highlighting 3 of our most important issues. Basically, we've touched on them all tonight, which is issues involving the centralization of tax collection and stuff like that, issues involving climate change and state-related policies regarding climate change and clean energy sources and power. And some of you may not know, but also our state representative is on the Public Utilities Committee of the House. So again, he's a useful person for us to talk to about those issues. And also, again, I think he's going to be a useful person to help us in this area and in all of the areas in the state where there are these issues around the necessary funding, again, that also Chuck brought up about, Doug brought up about funding of local fire and EMS services. How can that work? How can that be balanced? How can the people who are trying to provide fire and EMS services have adequate funding to provide the services that citizens, deserve and really expect? So anyway, trying to initiate that communication in this way, and also another thing that I've been doing in my term is really getting out and talking to a lot of the organizations in and around Columbus. Columbus is really a huge economic generator for the state. It's probably the top of the major cities. It's the top city right now. So I see, and actually Teresa and I attended a program, a 6 weeks planning program down in Columbus with an organization that Representative Carfagna mentioned, which is the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Corporation. And the only reason I mention that is participating in those groups and going from this county to those kinds of programs. We also then meet other people and see different initiatives that other municipalities are doing I've attended programs that are specifically designed for town and gown type municipalities in Ohio, and that's a whole nother thing for our particular situation. And again, I can get that, by participating in those groups, I can get our situation out and also learn.
Well, let me let the other dogs talk about the tail wagging, and then I do want to quickly do that, and then have a student question right here.
I'll mention on the county level, I mean, I feel like we personally have a good relationship. We're able to contact our legislators and speak to them. But for county commissioners, like a lot of county organizations, we have a state organization that has a staff, and that's what their business is to get our needs and our concerns in front of the legislators, to propose changes to legislation, and that's our County Commissioners Association. I know that Representative Carfagna has met with them, so they're a big lobbying arm. When it comes to federal, I mean, we also do that one-on-one. When we needed to have to get money for one of our wastewater systems, we went to Washington and we lobbied for it, and we came back with $500,000 grant in order to do that. So you do have to, be able to do that grassroots, and you do what you need to do in order to get the resources that you need. So I think that we do a pretty effective job on the county level. If the money isn't there, unfortunately, we don't always get what we want.
Any other comments?
Well, I've been, as I said, everybody probably knows I'm a Democrat, and for my 22 years I've been outnumbered in the state, but I never felt that was a deterrent. We've been very fortunate over the years to get a lot of state money, a lot of that state money, federal money coming to the state. The Public Works program that was initiated, that's been good to us, as it is a lot of the townships and the villages. But I don't feel that I've ever been shut out. I've made a lot of suggestions nobody listened to, but that's part of the game. I think one other thing, if I can just mention it here, one of the things that's always bothered me about it is territorialism. Trustees, mayors, council members, commissioners, they're all pretty territorial. When you start talking to us about giving up something or taking on something, right away we get a little shy about that. And that's why, even though we can sit here tonight and talk about, boy, it'd be great to consolidate this or that, it's like schools. Can you tell, I remember grew up in Danville, and Danville was supposed to be part of the Eastern Knox school system. That was unheard of. And so we sometimes have to accept for what's real, and that's another thing. Oftentimes in government, we are not real at what we can talk about these things all the time, but when it comes down to make it, I can say we should have raised taxes 20 years ago, or raised fees 20 years ago, or 10 years ago. Did we do it? No, we didn't. And I think that's, our government's the greatest in the world, and I'm the first one to say that, but we have a lot of things wrong, and part of it is the people themselves. We elect people, and they mean well, but they also want to keep their job. They like what they're doing. I love the job. Most people here, I know that's in public service, that whatever they're doing, you have to love their job to make America great. That's what makes us great. We like what we're doing to make our country better each and every day. And so, as I said, I've pled guilty to a lot of things tonight, but I'm going to keep on working.
All right. So let me do one more question, I think. I want to be respectful of people's time. It is late, and we have to drive home on some of those roads Nancy was talking about. So why don't we close it out with you?
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm a journalist with the Kenyon newspaper, Kenyon Collegian, and we're live streaming the event, and we have a few questions, and I'll just ask one, though. The first one comes from Miles Alderman III, and he asks, how do the legislators and the council members feel about legislative preemption, either at the state or federal level? And that can be answered by any of you.
Well, let's stick it to one question.
That's fine.
Yeah, we are, so legislative preemption?
Do you want me to reread the question?
Go ahead.
I said, Miles Alderman III says, how do the legislators and council members feel about legislative preemption, either at the state or federal level?
I guess I don't understand the question. What do they mean by
preempted?
what is being preempted?
I can move on to the next question.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
He didn't elaborate, so I'll just move on to the next one. It's pretty quick. This one comes from Marty Teresa, and
I think the Collegian has a new
Yes.
There's a deal here.
Any advice for young people considering running for office?
Good closeout question here.
That's a good one.
All right. Representative Carfagna, we're going to get started.
Student government is a great way. But I think just being involved in something bigger than yourself. You know, whether it's sports, whether it's theater, whether it's, you know, any sort of clubs, organizations. You know, one of the best gifts my dad ever gave me was he made me go work when I was in junior high. He said, I'm not going to give you an allowance, but come to the store on Saturday and come and work for 4 hours, and I'll pay you for that. So he taught me the value of work, but what he also taught me was communication skills, because, you know, people would come up to me, I saw the apron on, and so I would learn how to interpersonal, like, you know, yeah, here, that's down aisle, whatever, or, you know, you have a question about this, let me go help you with that. So I think teaching our kids the value of work early on is important, but for getting into politics, I mean, there's a variety of ways to do that. I mean, you can volunteer on a council race. You can do job shadow one of your local police officers right along in a cruiser. Go down to the fire station and just you know, talk to the guys. There are a variety of ways to get involved if you live in cities and townships and want to get on their zoning boards or get on you know, any kind of a resident committee. That's really just a good start, a way to get a taste of things. You know, if you want to get more aggressive, you can. There are page programs down at the Ohio Legislature that, if you're in college, you can do that over the summer. Kind of be on the fly on the wall to some of these discussions, and you know, beyond that, there are legislative internships that you can get, and the sky's the limit. But I mean, I'd be happy to, if there are people watching or listening to this that have any interest, I'd be happy to try to hook them up with the right people to get involved. Thank you.
Pretty much what he said for me. However, in my 42 years, I reflect a lot on how I got there, and it's oftentimes where I'm going. But I never felt you could wake up some morning and have an epiphany that today I'm going to run for office. I think it has to be built. Starting back when mom and dad were helping you do this or that and getting to control your own life. Experiences and life experiences are always going to be perfect. And I don't think there's, you know, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, rich or poor, I don't think those have anything to do with it. I think it's whether or not you have the mentality to make your community a better place. And that's why you're doing what you're doing. And all of us want to. When we leave, we want our place to be better than it was when we found it. And I think that's all part of that. But again, I don't think you get up when you're 29 years old and say, today's the day I decided I'm going to be president.
Well, a couple of thoughts I have about that. One thing that is a good way to get into local politics especially is to start attending the meetings of the varieties of local commissions and councils and other commissions and committees. And you know, if you start to follow the press, especially here, actually, I find it's really tremendous that we have the Mount Vernon News, because they follow local government. And if you start reading the Mount Vernon News, then you realize, you start to know about what different townships are doing and so on and so forth. And it heightens your ability to see, well, maybe, oh gosh, I heard this fall this part of the election is happening, or next fall I could go for whatever. And but you begin to build your interest and your knowledge by attending those meetings. And also, I just would encourage and really feel passionate about local government for all the reasons that we've said. And I would really encourage, especially young people, go to the place where you're going to live, the place that you, related to what Mayor Mavis is saying, the place that you're really passionate about, and get involved there and stay home. If it's where you came from, or if it's the new place that you're super excited about, stay home and get involved in your government at home. Especially, I feel that we see with, I hate to do generalizations, but a lot of times you see, especially with progressives and liberals, that they want to go to Washington, D.C., which, as Tom knows and other people know, is very, very interesting. But I just really like to encourage everyone to consider staying home.
That sounded to me like an invitation to the Collegian to come cover more Gambier Village meetings.
Well, yeah, they're often there, not 100%, but almost 100%. And the Mount Vernon News comes as well. And you know, again, reporting on all of our activities. When Mayor Mavis had the front page about his budget, we can, you know, learn about those things and understand, and also spark our interest to get more involved.
I can't add too much to that. I would say get involved on the grassroots level. See if you really have an interest and a passion for it. Because I think that probably not everyone's suited for it. It's not always easy. So I think that just finding out from a grassroots level, even in high school, volunteering and that type of thing, just find out if you really have an interest in it and you think you have a passion and you want to serve the public.
Well, I want to thank all of you for really being very generous with your time. The three of you have been here before. Representative Fine, this is your first time, I think. Welcome. We hope to do more of these from time to time. So thank you all for coming out, and please join me in thanking them.